Most women think cortisol is just about stress, but that is not the whole story. You can be doing all the things you've been told to do, managing your schedule, saying no when you need to, trying to keep your life under control, and your cortisol can still be running high all day long, every day, without you even knowing it. Why? Because stress is not the only thing that raises cortisol. And until you understand what's actually keeping your cortisol up, you're going to stay stuck, tired, holding on to weight, especially around the middle, wired at night and exhausted in the morning. So, today we're going to talk about what cortisol actually is, what's really raising it, and what to do about it.
Welcome to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast, brought to you by Thinlicious. I'm your host, Lisa Joy Thompson, and every week we bring you the science, the stories, and the straight talk you need to feel better and live free. From real food to hormone health to breaking free from yo-yo dieting for good. This is the show for every woman who's ready to stop surviving and start thriving. Settle in, friend. What you're about to hear might just change everything.
Okay, friend, before we dive in, let me just say this. I lived in a chronically elevated cortisol state for years and I had no idea. I was a busy mom. We had adopted multiple older kids from hard places, so we were dealing with lots of trauma and attachment issues. Plus, I had all of my autoimmune stuff to contend with, on and off restrictive diets that I'd been on, sleeping terribly, drinking too much caffeine, and I was just running on fumes. And I assumed the way I felt was just my normal, exhausted, wired at night, and tired in the morning. Weight that wouldn't budge no matter what I did, especially belly weight. Brain fog. All of that was cortisol. And I had no idea because I wasn't sitting around feeling stressed. I just felt like me. So, if any of this sounds like you, stay with me because there's a real explanation for why your body feels the way it does, and there's a way out. Let's start with what cortisol actually is because cortisol gets a bad rap, but it's not the villain. Cortisol is a hormone that your adrenal glands release, and you actually need it. It helps you wake up in the morning, it helps your body respond to threats, it regulates your blood sugar, it controls inflammation. It is a very useful hormone when it is working the way it's supposed to. The problem isn't the cortisol itself, the problem is when cortisol is too high for too often and too long. In a perfect world, your cortisol is highest in the morning, helping you wake up and get going. Then it slowly comes down throughout the day. By evening, it's low, and by bedtime, it is at its lowest, which lets melatonin take over, and then you fall asleep. At least that's the way it's supposed to work. But for most women, especially midlife women juggling 1,000 things, it doesn't work that way anymore. Cortisol gets stuck really high, and it doesn't come down at night. It spikes when it shouldn't, the whole rhythm gets thrown off, and that is where the problems start. So, what happens when your cortisol is high all the time? First, your blood sugar goes up. One of cortisol's main jobs is to make sure you have enough glucose in your bloodstream to handle a threat. So when cortisol rises, your liver releases glucose, even if you haven't eaten anything. Second, your insulin sensitivity drops. Cortisol makes your cells less responsive to insulin, which means your body has to release more and more insulin just to handle the same amount of sugar. And remember what we've talked about in past episodes. While your insulin is high, your body can't burn fat. It is locked in fat storage mode. So here's what that looks like in real life. You can be eating perfectly. You can be doing everything right. And if your cortisol is chronically high, your insulin is going to stay elevated right along with it. And your body will keep storing fat, especially around your midsection, because that's where cortisol driven fat tends to land. And no diet in the world will fix it as long as your cortisol is running the show. And I want to slow down on this belly fat thing for a second because it matters. Belly fat isn't just regular fat that happens to be on your stomach. There are actually two different kinds of fat in your midsection. There's the soft fat that sits right under your skin, and then there's the visceral fat, which is the deep fat that wraps around your organs. And that visceral fat is the dangerous kind. It's linked to heart disease, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and inflammation. And here's the really interesting part. Visceral fat is 2 to 4 times more responsive to cortisol than the fat anywhere else on your body. So when your cortisol is chronically elevated, your body preferentially packs fat into that deep belly area. Lovely, isn't it? So when you look in the mirror and you see that stubborn belly fat that wasn't there in your 30s, that's not just aging and it's not laziness. It's not a lack of crunches. It's a cortisol pattern. And no amount of crunches in the world is going to fix it until you address what's actually driving it. On top of that, high cortisol disrupts your sleep, which raises cortisol even more. It throws off your thyroid, it messes with your sex hormones, especially in perimenopause and menopause. It increases inflammation, breaks down muscle, it's exhausting your body, even when you feel like you're not doing anything. And I want to add one more piece here because this is something most women don't know. In perimenopause, your progesterone drops, and it drops earlier and more sharply than your estrogen does. Why does that matter for cortisol? Because your progesterone is what your body uses to keep you calm. Your body actually converts progesterone into a compound that acts on the same receptors in your brain that anti-anxiety medications target. So progesterone is literally like a built-in chill pill. When that drops in perimenopause, that built-in chill pill is gone, which means the same amount of stress that you handled at 30 hits you completely differently at 45. You haven't changed. Your life isn't necessarily harder, but your body is processing it with fewer tools. So if you've ever said, I don't know why this is hitting me so hard, I usually handle things so much better than this. That's not in your head. It's totally real. Your body lost its built-in calming hormone and nobody warned you it was coming. So here's the part I really want you to hear because this is where most women get it wrong. Stress isn't the only thing that raises cortisol. In fact, there are 5 major things that drive cortisol, and most of them have nothing to do with feeling stressed. Okay, so number 1 is actually emotional stress. Yes, the thing we all think about: work pressure, relationship strain, financial worry, parenting overwhelm. All of that raises cortisol. So if your life is a lot right now, your cortisol is probably elevated. But here's where it gets interesting because all of these other things that drive cortisol, they're not stress. Number 2 is poor sleep. When you don't get enough good sleep, your cortisol goes up the next day. It's not optional, it's a physiological response. So, all of those nights when you've stayed up late, woken up at 3 in the morning, or just slept badly because of perimenopause, that's been keeping your cortisol elevated day after day, year after year. And that is not a small effect. As a matter of fact, there's a study that was published all the way back in 1997 that looked at what one bad night of sleep does to your cortisol levels the next evening. Okay, just one. And researchers found that after partial sleep deprivation, evening cortisol was 37% higher than after a normal night of sleep. After total sleep deprivation, it was 45% higher. That's crazy. 45% higher from one bad night of sleep. Now, think about what that means if you've been sleeping poorly for years. If you've been waking up at 3 in the morning because of perimenopause. If you've been staying up too late because it's the only time the house is quiet. Maybe you're a mom who hasn't really slept since your first baby was born. Your cortisol has been running high every single one of those days, and you didn't know that was what was happening. Okay, number 3 is interesting. It's under eating. This one is huge, especially for women who've been dieting for years. When your body doesn't get enough food, especially enough protein, your body interprets that as a famine. And what does your body do in a famine? It releases cortisol to raise your blood sugar, to keep you alive. So every time you've cut your calories too low, every time you've skipped breakfast, every time you've undereaten throughout the day and overeaten at night, you've been spiking your cortisol. Number 4 is over exercising. And I'm going to say this one carefully because I don't want anyone to use this as an excuse to not move your body. Movement is good, but punishing exercise, the kind that leaves you exhausted and depleted, raises cortisol. Hours of cardio, intense workouts without enough recovery, exercising while under eating. All of this can drive your cortisol up. And here's the cruel part. Women who are trying really hard to lose weight often work out harder and eat less, which is the perfect recipe for keeping cortisol high and keeping weight on. And number 5 is blood sugar swings. When your blood sugar crashes, your body releases cortisol to bring it back up. So those late afternoon sugar crashes, the shakiness when you haven't eaten in a while, the desperate hunger that hits you out of nowhere, all cortisol, your body protecting you from low blood sugar. So when you look at all of that together, you start to see why your cortisol might be running high even when you don't feel stressed. You might be sleeping poorly, you might be under eating, you might be over exercising, your blood sugar might be on a roller coaster, and every single one of those things is keeping your cortisol up, even on a day when nothing stressful happened. Now, here's the trap I want to make sure you all see very clearly. If you have been a chronic dieter, you are walking around with elevated cortisol from the dieting itself. Cutting calories raises cortisol, skipping meals raises cortisol, restricting raises cortisol, and that cortisol is then raising your insulin and locking your body in fat storage mode, which means the harder you try to lose weight, the harder it's gotten. It's a closed loop. The diet raises cortisol, the cortisol raises insulin, the insulin blocks fat burning. You don't lose weight, you blame yourself, you try harder, you restrict more, your cortisol goes up more, and on and on and on. And here's where it gets even more frustrating because the symptoms of high cortisol look exactly like the things that make you want to diet harder. Belly fat, stubborn weight that won't budge, cravings for sugar and salt, energy crashes in the afternoon, sleep that doesn't restore you, that feeling that nothing is working. So you look in the mirror, you see those symptoms, and you decide, I'm just going to try harder. I'm going to eat less, I'm going to work out more, I'm going to restrict tighter, I'm going to control more. And every single one of those moves drives your cortisol even higher, which drives your insulin higher, which makes the symptoms worse. This is why I keep saying you can't diet your way out of this. I know we talk about this a lot, but the very thing you're doing to fix it is making it worse. You have to interrupt the loop. And the only way to interrupt the loop is to give your body what it actually needs instead of what diet culture has told you it needs. So, what actually lowers cortisol? Well, the only thing that fixes it is changing what you're doing to your body. There are a few different things that you can do to lower your cortisol. Number one, sleep is the foundation. If you are not sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, nothing else on this list is going to work as well as it should. Real sleep, like going to bed at a reasonable hour, treating sleep like medicine, not like a luxury that you'll get to when life slows down. If perimenopause is wrecking your sleep, that's a conversation to have with your doctor. It's not something you should be trying to power through. Number two, resistance training. I want to spend an extra minute on this one because this is the lever most women in midlife are missing. And it's the one that does the most for the hormone problem we've been talking about. There was a meta-analysis published in 2023 that looked at 27 separate studies on resistance training and insulin resistance in adults that were either overweight or obese. And the finding was extremely clear. Resistance training on its own independently improves insulin resistance. Not because of weight loss, not because of diet, just from lifting weights consistently. And remember, insulin resistance is the metabolic mess that high cortisol creates. So the form of movement that most directly counteracts what cortisol is doing to your body is resistance training. On top of that, when you lift weights or do resistance training a couple times a week, you build muscle, which raises your metabolic rate. You strengthen your bones, which is huge for women in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. And you improve your overall hormone picture in a way that cardio alone cannot do. Resistance training isn't punishing exercise. It's not hours of cardio. It's lifting weights, doing body weight exercises, or using resistance bands a few times a week for 30 to 40 minutes. That's it. And friend, if you're a woman over 40 who hasn't been doing this, I want you to hear me. This is one of the most important things you can do for your body right now. Resistance training isn't optional anymore. It is foundational. Okay, number three, protein and blood sugar stability. Every blood sugar crash is a tiny cortisol spike. Every time your blood sugar drops, your body releases cortisol to bring it back up. So if you're eating toast for breakfast and then crashing by 10 in the morning, that crash is a cortisol event. You can't fix your cortisol if you're spending half your day on a blood sugar roller coaster. The fix is real food, enough protein at every meal, healthy fats. You should be aiming for 30 grams of protein at every meal, but especially at breakfast. I know it sounds like a lot, but once you start doing it, it really isn't that much. Number four, nervous system work. Okay, this is where slow breathing, spending time outside, taking walks without your phone, those types of things come in really handy. But they will work much better when you've already done the first three. You can't breathe your way out of a sleep deficit. You can't relax your way out of insulin resistance. And here's something most cortisol conversations miss. You can do all the right things on paper, sleep well, eat well, move your body gently, and still have high cortisol if your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight mode. If you've been running on adrenaline for years, if you've been carrying chronic worry, if you've been bracing against the next bad thing happening, your nervous system may not know how to come down anymore. It thinks high alert is normal. Bringing your nervous system back into a calm state is a real thing. It takes time. It looks like slow breathing, time in nature, sitting quietly, journaling, letting yourself feel safe in your body again. Okay, I want to give you 3 things you can do this week to start bringing your cortisol down. Number 1, eat breakfast, a real breakfast within an hour of waking up. Aim for 30 grams of protein. This signals safety to your body and it prevents the cortisol spike that comes from running on empty all morning. Number 2, stop the punishing workouts for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. And I want you to replace your hardest workouts with walking and strength training. See how your body responds. If the scale has been stuck despite working out hard, this single shift might be the thing that breaks the plateau. All right, number 3, set a bedtime. Yes, I know you're an adult, but your cortisol is on a schedule and you're going to need to be on a schedule with it. So pick a bedtime and stick to it for 1 week. Notice what happens to your energy, your cravings, and your mood. All right, friend, here's what I want you to take with you today. Cortisol is not the enemy. It's a signal. It's your body telling you that something is off. Maybe you're not sleeping enough. Maybe you're not eating enough. Maybe you're trying so hard to fix yourself that you're actually wearing yourself down. Whatever it is, you have the power to start listening to those signals and giving your body what it actually needs. If you want help getting started, head on over to thinlicious.com/happy for our free on-demand video training. It walks you through exactly what's been keeping you stuck, how to start healing your metabolism, and how to actually build a plan that works for the long haul. And one more thing before we wrap up. If you are currently on a GLP-1, or if you're considering one, if you're afraid to come off the one you're on, or if you came off and regained some of that weight, I want you to know about something we're hosting this Thursday, June 25th. It is a masterclass called What Your Doctor Didn't Tell You About GLP-1s. It's $27 and it's going to give you a lot of really great information that you should have been given before you ever started taking one of these drugs. Plus, it's got information that you need to make a real informed decision about your next step. So if that's you, please come. You can sign up at getthinlicious.com/masterclass. The URL is in the show notes. And if you're interested in learning more, check out last week's podcast because we dove a little bit deeper into GLP-1s and what you need to know. Also, one more thing I want you to remember as we close. Your body is not broken. It is communicating. And the work is not to push harder. That work is to listen better. I hope you have a fabulous week. I will see you next week. And until then, feel better and live free.